room. Well, now we move into the part of the agenda, the local panel of experts. And I thought it was interesting in Tripp's presentation that he talked about land use regulations and how some of them, of course, when you look at them on the surface, they're well-intended, they make sense, but then when you consider the context of transportation, jobs, communities, they may not always make sense in the changing times. So I think that's a good segue to our first panelist. This is Ducey-Ortiz. She is the planning director in Gloucester County, and Ann is, you've been with the county for many years now, doing a great job. Has cooperated and worked well with Bay Aging on some of the development work we've done and the transit. And even a couple of years ago, Gloucester County was getting a lot of recognition statewide because they were seriously exploring a housing fund. I know you remember Ann was intimately involved in looking at that housing fund at the same time that the state was looking at, and then they have been successful, but the housing trust fund. So the housing fund hasn't happened yet, but I'll let Ann talk a little bit about the planning aspect here in Gloucester and her take on all this.
Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here. A lot of these issues that were brought up today, we've been struggling with in Gloucester County for quite some time. And we do have the benefit of water and sewer and in community districts, the Hampton roads, but the challenges are pretty much the same. I was just going to go through Tripp's 6 points and kind of talk about how Gloucester County has dealt with them or not. But I think the bottom line, it comes down to political will and public perception ultimately, because so much of what we do here, there are laws that have to be passed by the governing body with a lot of community input, and I think those are some of the challenges. So the first is promote more compact walkable development. We've been trying to do that, again, in a rural locality, even though Gloucester is kind of becoming more suburban. A lot of people say, oh, sidewalks are nowhere, that's just ridiculous, especially here in Gloucester. But we do have 2 primary village areas, the Gloucester Point area and the courthouse area. And through some state funding, actually, some of you may be aware of the urban development areas, we did get a grant. We really didn't like the General Assembly telling us that we have to provide for most of our population in one small area, but Gloucester Point is about 1/3 of the county's population, and so that area is the area we chose to look at for providing more walkable community. It does have 17 going right to the middle of it, which is a major challenge, and VDOT is not always the best partner. They don't want sidewalks. I've actually had one VDOT person say, let's just build some walls so the cars can get through. So, but that plan and the other plan, we actually have implemented. We have had great citizen input. People want to walk, and I see people walking all the time, similar to the picture that Tripp showed of taking their life in their hands with the baby, carriages, trying to walk. The latest VDOT project didn't have any sidewalks, so we're trying to actually get that retrofit. But the next challenge is actually writing the ordinances to implement our plan. Right now, most of the ideas in the plan couldn't be done under our current ordinances, so that is a big challenge. We've had some major rezonings, though, that are walkable, and so it is something that we're promoting, but they do have to go through that kind of rezoning. So we're trying to make it by right. The big issue, again, is the board doesn't really want to give the planning commission that much power, or the staff, so they actually want to see every rezoning. So it's kind of, again, that political will of implementing the plan. We've had some successes. I was just talking to Karen about some duplexes. Through some of these types of meetings, we've actually learned about universal design and encouraged one of our local developers to include universal design in some duplexes that he recently built. So we are trying to promote these at least on a lower scale, case-by-case basis. Again, the biggest obstacles are the NIMBYism. We, again, had our Gloucester Point plan, had a rezoning for a multifamily house, and the neighbors came out against it, and the board wasn't, they eventually did approve it, but they weren't that supportive of it. So, so that's kind of a big issue. Foster living and work, again, we are a bedroom community. 59% of our workers commute out of the county, so that is a problem. The higher paying jobs are over in the Hampton Roads area, and so we have that sprawl, and we don't really have transit. I was talking to Ken here before about, how can we connect the transit we have here with Bay Aging to over the bridge. We have a lot of veterans that commute to the facilities over in the Hampton Roads region. Some of the things we are trying to do, though, is to encourage some of the local economy, agribusiness, agritourism, ecotourism, so that people can work here in the county. if they want to. It is a challenge. Again, Riverside and Centerra are big industries here, and our probably the biggest industry is Walmart and Canon, so, and then the county. So, but we are trying to promote in the village areas, live above, and trying to allow for mixed use development. Encourage renovation, redevelopment, and infill. That's been a big challenge because of state building code issues. We do encourage it, but between our zoning ordinances for parking and other things, it is a really big challenge, and often people will go to greenfield sites to build. So that's something that it really isn't an easy answer. Again, when you talk about handicap accessibility, it's really hard to retrofit some of the existing buildings. We're very fortunate here in the courthouse with the Main Street Preservation Trust. They've done a facade improvement program to try to encourage people to improve the courthouse area. Again, that's a great partnership with the county and a private nonprofit organization, so we're really fortunate. Another thing we're working, our board has challenged us to work with a business development focus group and actually try to get more flexibility in our ordinances. A lot of them written, I mean, some are still from 1984, so, try to get out of the way and allow development and creativity. So we're working on that. Again, it's time and resources to do all that. Guide growth to targeted areas. We do have a development district where in the 80s, Gloucester County was the highest growing locality in the Commonwealth, and the county decided to invest in public water and sewer, and then things slowed down a little, so we're actually still trying to pay for that investment, and that's kind of a challenge again, because we do have public water and sewer, we do have a major arterial, but it's very costly to develop there. VDOT requires certain entrance requirements, which is very expensive, and then it's very expensive to connect water and sewer. We pretty much make developers do everything. We don't have any money to give them incentives, so the best thing we can do is density bonuses and those kind of things. But we do have agricultural and low-density residential development outside the zoning outside the development district. We did have a challenge for a while where we were starting to see sprawl outside the development district because it was cheaper to build on well and septic than to connect to public water and sewer. So kind of, the unintended consequences of some of the things you do. Promote transit-oriented development. Gloucester County is part of the Hampton Roads Transportation Organization, and as part of that, I get to go to monthly meetings to discuss all these transportation issues, and it's very frustrating about the 460 because we spend all our time on these long-range transportation plans that have to be fiscally constrained, and there's all these rules you have to go through, and 460 wasn't on it until the governor threw a bunch of money on it. So, that's really frustrating, and there's different pots of money, but I have to say that the TPO has been very good about trying to put any extra money into transit. We started with the light rail in Norfolk, and even Gloucester. We're not going to benefit for a long time. Probably there's a transit vision study that was done by DRPT that was a great community effort and talked about trying to connecting all these different types of transportation nodes. And for Gloucester and York County, it would probably be just an express bus, but that could then connect to Bay Transit. And so there's an opportunity. So what we're trying to do is focus development in the courthouse and in Gloucester Point area so that when that occurs, there's a point where people can then commute over. So encourage green buildings. We have a Go Green Advisory Committee, and they've been focusing on trying to encourage the county to provide density bonuses and incentives. Again, being a small county with limited resources, any type of financial incentives are pretty hard to come by. But and then again, I wanted to put a plug in for Bay Agents, weatherization. When we try to do some affordable housing programs, a lot of times it's new development, and we have a lot of existing older housing stock that probably could be better redeveloped. And again, as Neil was mentioning with the lending, the housing prices might be the same, but most people in the programs we tried to accomplish, people just couldn't get the loans, so that's always a big issue. Providing greater transportation options. Gloucester has one main road right to the middle, and so what we're trying to promote is parallel roads, which is very difficult because there's a lot of existing development. And again, this is going to be seizing opportunities as they occur and totally depending on private development. But we have put it in our plan to try to create some parallel roads to make sure that, try to keep local traffic at least off of 17. And again, sidewalks. One of the benefits to having all the congestion is that we are a non-attainment area, so there's federal funding for different programs to reduce that congestion. And we've applied for several We've applied for that funding, and we have several sidewalk projects that are now in the 6-year plan much to the regret that we got. But, so hopefully get sidewalks at Gloucester Point on Old Hayes Road, and then we actually have a sidewalk project here in the courthouse that we're trying to fill some of the gaps. So the negative is as we improve on our congestion, we may not get the funding anymore, so it's kind of that. That's one thing I've learned working with the TPO, there's different pots of funding, so I know people get frustrated, well, why are they paving over here, you know, and not fixing this road? But there's all different pots of funding, and they're used for different things. And then this is one we really struggled with, advanced housing affordability. Gloucester County used to have a housing department, and it pretty much ran the Section 8 program that Karen's working on now through Bay Aging. And for various reasons, they decided to get rid of that department or put it into Bay Aging. And we had a housing advisory committee, but we really didn't have the staff or resources to promote a housing fund. Like if we had a housing fund, how to administer the program. And we had several projects. One was the Kilmarnock rezoning where they proffered affordable housing and how to keep that housing affordable and having deeds of trust. And it's fairly complicated to have a housing program. And again, Gloucester decided that, you know, we're doing a lot of things with use and trying to create housing types, but to actually put money towards a program and staff towards a program is something that we didn't do. And we kind of rely on Bay Aging to fulfill that. And we have wonderful nonprofits here in the county that do that service. So we're very fortunate in that way. So that's kind of what we're doing to try to address some of these housing issues. Again, I think it's a challenge, especially for small localities. One thing I did want to suggest with your comment regarding rural counties, Rural by Design by Randall Arndt has a whole chapter in it about how to provide affordable housing in rural communities. But again, we brought some of the information to our planning commission about like allowing accessory apartments, and they didn't want it. So you have to kind of think of your community of a lot of people moved here away from the city for their suburban house, and they don't want other people, you know, I think that's just a citizen thing that you have to always deal with, and I think education, again, is a big key for that. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ann. Our next panelist is Vaughn Pollock, and Vaughn is the director of the James City County Office of Housing and Community Development. And before that, he was the director of the York County Housing Office. Before that, he worked for James City County Office of Housing and Community Development. So he came back last year, and Vaughn has we have a history of working together, Bay Aging working with his office on a senior apartment complex in James City County called Parker View 67-unit affordable housing complex. It's a successful partnership, and we work very closely, and it's close to Newtown across the street. So I'll let you take it away from here, Vaughn. But
thanks, Josh. Good morning, everyone. I am, as Josh said, with James City County, and I'm going to talk to you about Newtown, which is a new urban development. Is everyone familiar with this area of James City County? Anyone not? So I actually have another presentation that I didn't put up here. Neil asked me to do something earlier in the year, and I was waffling on which way to go, and so I made two at the time. The other presentation talked about the Ironbound Square development, which is a neighborhood across from Newtown that I'm about to show you, which is where Parker View is located. But these things tie into one another, and when we talk about a new urbanism and a dense development, especially when you talk about a locality like James City County, which, if you go back 20 years, was very rural, similar to where Gloucester is now. And then because of rapid development, it, at that time, back in the 80s, was one of the fastest growing localities in Virginia. And so here we are now, our population, the 2010 count, just clipped over 69,000. And so we talk, you know, when I do the averages, that's like 130 people moving into the county every month. And you can see that play out with our schools. And last night, if I'm a little bit loopy this morning, I was at a board meeting until 11 o'clock last night, where the board permitted additional funding for a CDBG project that we're dealing with now, not as complex as Ironbound Square, but preceding our public hearing was a 2-hour public hearing for a trailer park. James City County has a primary service area, which is a growth control tool. which is what it felt it needed to do back in the 80s. And the idea was to congregate most of the growth within the area where it was going to have primary municipal infrastructure, water and sewer primarily, and more of the larger roads. And so that sort of led, that idea of containment, which comes from the primary service areas and the growth control policies out of Oregon and Seattle. What that led to was developers looking for those areas within James City County where they could do infill. It led to the conversation of infill. And Newtown was actually pitched as an infill development. And I don't know if I have any slides on here to show you the pre-Newtown. This is the Williamsburg at a crossroads. This is the crossroads study. So what occurred back in 97, 98 was that the College of William and Mary realized that, you know, every May, every Mother's Day, they would have these grandiose graduations, and the class of whatever the year was would walk across the stage and then sprint to the airport, jump in their car, and beat feet out of James City County and Williamsburg. Never to be seen again until 5 years later when homecoming came around again. And people started realizing, you know, there is a huge amount of investment and brain trust that's scooting out of here. Why aren't they staying? And they weren't staying because there was no there, okay? Williamsburg is where you come to spend your autumn and winter years. And so, believe me, I'm in late summer, so. The president of William and Mary at the time, President Sullivan, started looking around and started talking with some of the leaders, thought leaders within James City County. They started looking at examples of college towns nationwide, and they started focusing on Princeton. Princeton at the time was doing some development around their area, and who would have thought Princeton had this type of problem? But Princeton started getting very dense and started doing more thematic type of development around the Princeton area. And they said, what of those elements can we bring to Williamsburg to try to create some stickiness so that when people graduated with that diploma, you know, they would have some ability to stick around. So this was the study, and this actually, I can't remember if it was this one or the next one, was done by the William McDonough Group. Anybody familiar with McDonough? At this time, he was the Dean of Architecture at UVA. McDonough's known globally for his cradle-to-cradle thought, for conservation of energy, for new urbanism development. So all this good color up here was a cornfield, big farm. And this area with no color right here is primarily African-American community known then as Carriage Road. That area is in James City County. All the stuff over here in color is James City County. This area here is actually the city of Williamsburg. This area here is a tourism property, which was trees and grown over farmland, and had a Ford dealership up on Richmond Road, which is that arterial you see on the eastern side there. They decided that this is close enough proximity to William and Mary. This is South College Woods here, so the campus of William and Mary is actually located in this area here. And there's the auxiliary campus complex, right, the Dillard complex. So McDonough and Associates came in, they looked at this and they said, what does that look like? Remember, this was cornfield mostly? Get dense. You know, density breeds choice. Choice brings in people. People breed stickiness. We want to be where the people are. So I wish I had the before of this. That was cornfield also. That you're looking at is the Williamsburg James City County Courthouse. The courthouse had been in town. The judges wanted a new facility because their facility built in 1967 by the 80s had begun to degrade. And so what they talked about in this plan, what McDonough talked about is how do you create this there? You can't just get dense, you gotta have something there. And so he talked about cornerstones, he talked about bringing in government, because when you bring in government as a footprint government people show up to work almost every day unless they're taking vacation. We only get 8 of those a year, so they're probably at work. So they're there. Then you need to bring in religion. You bring in your religious footprint, and then you bring in your commercial. So he had 3 cornerstones that he talked about. And he says by putting these activities in proximity to one another, you start creating this circulation pattern. If you bring in those people, those government people are going to be there during the week, then a sandwich shop is going to open up, a restaurant's going to open up because they're going to have lunches, and some of them might stay in late, and so they're going to go and have a dinner. If you bring in the religious footprint on weekends, you're going to have something going on there. And once the commercial will breed commercial. So he's trying to set up this virtuous cycle. The courthouse is one of those footprints. Originally, it was supposed to be in the new town proper, but then it bumped up against the Virginia Constitution. How can the courthouse be in the county and then serve the city? So the compromise was scoop the courthouse just outside of the county or outside of Newtown proper, and then the city will get to annex, believe it or not, in our non-annexing the county. So yeah, sure, annex. Annex the courthouse, and it would be in proximity and be in the city after the annexation. So it's only sitting on maybe 6 acres of property. This is Newtown circa, when did you ask me? April maybe? April. The planners in James City County, as it was coming out of the ground, started calling it Bangtown. Because when it was originally conceived, it was going to have this discovery park that was going to bring in all this new high dynamic tech development. These startup firms were going to come here. This was what we were thinking in the late 90s. Of course, there was this thing called the dot-com bubble, so all of that went out the window, and what ended up coming were a lot of banks. However, I will note that in this building here is the Williamsburg Community Health Foundation. So it has nice digs there, and that does, it's kind of a think farm, I like to think of it. But these are banks. Can't remember who's in this building. Architectural firms. What ended up happening is that those office parks that had gotten a little older and passé, a lot of those businesses picked up and moved here because this was a new place to be. This is the commercial component. And this is something I want to give a warning about with our new urbanism thinking. You've got to be careful of new urbanism whitewashing, which is, you just go in there and you make it look like it's urban. And so here, does this look like live over work? That's what it wants you to think, is that it's live over work. It's got these faux second stories up here. But all the commercials down here, and a lot of these are buildings with, you just walk, they're big boxes dressed up to look like live over work in this part of it. Now, I will tell you that this is the movie theater. And so that brought in a different thing of there. Because it turns out the movie theater attracted teens. And there was all this thing to create this there, and then it becomes a teen hangout, and you should see the people writing in the paper going, can't we do something about these teens hanging out here? and the funny part about it was what you saw 2 years prior for the movie theater getting there, were people writing in saying, there's no place for our teens to go. So, when we talk about those village spaces, I would come back and tell you were saying, and that 1/3 of Gloucester's population is in Gloucester Point. I think if you go and look around rural areas and say, well, where are our people? People gravitate to people. We're social beings. There are some of us who like to have our cottage on the hill and be an island unto ourselves. And that's great. But very few of us, most of us have to congregate around one another, want to be around one another. Now what we really want though is choice. We want to have choice. And we've got to start thinking about how do we build so that we have choice. And I would submit to you that when you build a more dense development, because you're creating all these different units, you're providing people choice. This, we're dealing with this is true live over work here. all this second and third here, second level all across here, all of that, those are actual apartments. Newtown is already, it's 10 years old, it's a little over 10 years old. It was, the first stuff came out of the ground in '99, so it's 13 years old. It's a lot of there. On a day like today, you come in there, you're going to see people get off work. They're going to change clothes, they're going to come out, they're going to walk their pets, they're going to stroll. In the summertime with the restaurants, you've got a lot of restaurants around in here, and like all of them, you can't have a place without, even if you, I think your business plan was not to have a courtyard and sit outside, people just take chairs and tables and throw them out there because somebody's going to come sit there. And so it's building community. People, it used to be in Williamsburg, you'd ask somebody, oh, where do you live? And if they were not really proud of living in Kingsville. I'm sorry, what did you say? Kingsville. Did you say Kingsville? Yes! Now it's Newtown. Did you say Newtown? Yeah, I said. So it's gotten to be that type of thing. Now, the good thing about, one of the more visionary things about this development was it was understood that we need to be inclusive. And so there is affordable here. And this is just this is any old Saturday, just a relevant Saturday I was out taking pictures. And that's where, creating a there. This is prom. That's actually my son. That's why I remember. But this is just a regular old Saturday. And people are there. People are there shopping. They've got the kids. And you talk about having the pedestrian infrastructure. Well, you put the sidewalks there and they go somewhere. People will get on them and they'll walk. So courtyards, creating place, and that's a big part of it. So here, believe it or not, creating community, these are apartments. So these go, our median rent is around $1,100 to $1,200 in James City County. We don't pretend that that's affordable, but that is what it is. But you have a lot of young families here who are living, so they get sort of the best of both worlds. And the other thing is about, when we talk about aging in place, Newtown tries to offer enough variety of choice in housing that you could conceivably go from the apartment to the starter house, to the family house, and to something that is livable or visitability, has the aging in place parts in it. Now, aging and affordable, because some of those are houses that have elevators in them because they're 3 stories. But these are affordable These are affordable units. These are duplexes here. But if you stand back and look at them, they look like large manor houses, don't they? Okay. And so this area here, Twitty Realty worked with my predecessor, Rick Hansen, and looked at how can, this was an SUP with proffers, so that as new sections came into development, the developers had to come and proffer, and part of the proffer is affordable housing units. And as Adam was talking about, you have to get into some schemes. And what are my next pictures? This is a good example. So how many square feet is that?
1,200.
It's 1,000 square feet. Okay. How much was that in 2004?
What did it cost?
Yeah, what was the cost to own that?
125.
You wish.
I think 680.
200,000. Okay, so we're seeing teachers, planners, junior planners, living in these structures. How? $200,000, 1,000 square feet. Okay, so what we do is we work with the developer, and when they proffer these units, and these units have to be in the development, they can't be out in the outskirts somewhere. They have to be integrated into it. They're going to have the same construction features and everything else. So the builder comes in and he builds it, and we're using home, and we're using primarily home, and then but the developer then is taking a $50,000 soft second on that. It's his money that he's putting. He's putting onto the unit. I mean, he's getting his money back out because when we provide the mortgage, it's going back to him, but the 50 is staying on the unit as a soft second. So now it's $150,000 unit. And that gets to be more affordable for, especially when you're dealing with your VHDA mortgages. So the occupant has a mortgage at $150,000, 30-year fixed mortgage, but they've got $50,000 of debt as a soft second on the unit. Now, if they go to sell, they have to satisfy that debt. And that debt comes back into, it actually comes back to us, the housing office, comes back to the county. And we use that to roll it over again to provide down payment and closing cost assistance to the next person coming on. But if the first mortgage holder stays in the unit 15 years, after the 5th year, in the 6th year, we start forgiving that debt at 1/10 per year. So that after 15 years, the debt is gone. And the hope is that as the unit appreciates in value, that person will be able to sell, and then they will be on the income ladder, on the property ladder, to rise to the next big thing. That's how it works on paper. That's how it would work in a great economy. That's not how it's working here. What we're finding, and sitting and doing this in 2004, who knew? We had a couple of situations where we're seeing where people's lifestyles have changed. Small unit, so if you're a single person or if you're just a couple, fine, it works. But when you become a family of 3, it's 2-bedroom here. Then things get a little bit tight. And so people then want to move out. Well, what has happened in the market? Supposedly things have gotten affordable. That just means that, what you financed and what the value is, you're upside down. Which is fine if you stay in for the 15 years. Being upside down is no big problem as long as you're going to stay there. It becomes a problem when you try to move. And so what I've been dealing with is a couple of people who wanted to move and they're upside down. And they're saying, well, forgive the $50,000. Yeah, no. Because where we try to give people flexibility to say, we even have a no lease clause in here because what we didn't want to see happen is all the affordable units become lease up or leased or rental units. Because again, we're trying to build community, we're trying to build there, and we want people to have a stake in it. But we try to be a little bit flexible about that, knowing that people wanted to get out of the unit for whatever reasons. And the 2 that have successfully transitioned were dealing with medical issues that, it was just the right thing to do. But other people who have lifestyle choice issues were saying, well, you need to either find us a qualified buyer who could come in and purchase it, and we would just, subordinate the second and allow them to assume it. Or you need to go find someone who's going to be willing to, who wants to live in Newtown. The thing about this trough in the economy is a lot of the big development that was going on there is not there. And so you have to think about these things. They're not panaceas. Let me shift back into looking at product type and density. These are alleys with garageways on alleys. The larger homes out in the development, there are 4,000 square foot homes. In the new section, there'll be even some 5,000 square foot homes, but I don't know if you can see that in the back, it's kind of dark. But integrating these units in with everything else is still the right thing to do. Those part of the elements of the plan still make a lot of sense. This is a parking area for some of the businesses that are there. Well, unless you're working late, by the time you get home, that parking is available for the resident living here. So the parking lot's doing double duty. Here, I didn't even know this until this year, but this apartment complex, which on the front side has commercial, on the back is commercial, but it's got parking underneath. But understand, this is going to drive your cost up. And so we want these things, but if you're going to have them, you're going to pay for them. Again, live over work. These are some of the starter apartments. These are townhouses actually, so these have a mortgage with them. And these are the apartments in there. More of the affordable mixed in. No panaceas. This unit, which I think is probably the marquee unit, it's on Main Street as you come into Newtown. has been empty since it was built, and it's been empty maybe 5 years. I think an Apple store would go there, but nobody listens to me. And so we've also had a number of businesses cycle out, and these storefronts remain empty to this day. But that, they do get. We have seen the level of commercial go in there drop off. So where you were getting bicycle shops, more high-end stuff, we're now seeing we've gotten more yogurt, ice cream stores that you can shake a stick at. This is where businesses go. These were where the .coms were supposed to go. We're seeing doctors' offices and lawyers' offices go there. But those guys are steadfast and true. They pay their rent, and so that's going to help in the long term. This is the new higher-end housing section, Area 8. I keep telling people Section 8, and they automatically think, what? It's going on in this area here, and there's going to be more affordable there. We're going to get about 40 units in that. So this is Newtown today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In Tripp's report, and I encourage everyone to, when you have a chance to read it, there's some over there, and of course on your website and Housing Virginia's website. But in that report, they talk about, he talks about the need for communities to have housing for nurses and teachers and police, firefighters, workforce housing, and how important that is, and how it's just very difficult to house these folks in the community where they work. And these are essential service folks. Our next panelist is William Warren, and he's the president of Partners Foundation based in Lancaster County. Now, really just a groundbreaking, cutting-edge program. It's a rental housing, a 16-unit rental housing property in Kilmarnock. And I'll let Mr. Warren talk about it, but the point, the mission there is to provide affordable housing for the teachers, the nurses, those public service folks. So I'll let Mr. Warren take it over. I can pass those on.
Well, there's not enough of them, so maybe I can ask the Bay Aging people to maybe share one. I am Bill Warren with Partners Foundation, and our project is a little bit different than the projects that we've talked so far. We're not tax credit, we're not very low income. We are located in Lancaster County. It's a community project that services the needs of our workforce people in the county. It's principally for teachers. And what I've handed out, I'll talk a little bit about. Is there? Oh, okay. Right on top. It's called Mercer Place. That's what it looks like. It's located within a half mile of the Main Street Shopping District in Kilmarnock. It's composed of 2 buildings, 16 units in total, 8 in each building, 4 down. All the units are 2 bedrooms, 2 baths. They all have washer, dryer, dishwasher, microwave. They're energy efficient units. They have fans in 4 buildings. This is what it looks like due to the zoning in our area. 6 acres is required for 16 units. This is on 6 acres. Very nice location. That's one of the buildings. This is a design that came from an architect in North Carolina. There are 3 teacher housing projects in North Carolina that we basically borrowed the design from and followed exactly what they did to do this. We have a gazebo, as you can see. We have a pavilion. The residents wanted a fire pit. We have an elaborate fire pit. I can tell you that last year between October and December, they burned 2 cords of wood. So it's used pretty heavily. That's the design. The bedrooms are located so that it's ideal for 2 teachers who are roommates to live there. However, something we didn't really realize, kind of the new economy or new way of life or new lifestyle, we have no roommates. We have 3 teachers who came this year who wanted to get into Mercer Place if there was not a place for them. We polled all the teachers that were there and others there to try to get them to accept a roommate. Doesn't work. Probably one of the reasons is that we've talked about, I think you used the term cost prohibitive, what's the word you use? Cost burden. No one here has a cost burden because we set the initial rents at 25% of a starting teacher's after-tax salary. So no one has a cost burden. So they don't really have to have a roommate for cost purposes, so they don't want a roommate. So here's where we are. We started this project in 2008. It's totally a community project. We have no people on our payroll. We pay no one to do anything other than a property management firm to manage it. We opened the property in July of last year. This is our second year. Currently, we have 11 teachers in the place, 2 from the private sector, Chesapeake Academy, 11 from the public school systems. We have 3 nurses. We have the school psychologist, and we have 1 person who is a community service board employee, and we have 1 person who is a private sector employee. They're all in the category workforce. And that means for us, the family income has to be greater than $32,194 for them to live there. Cannot be greater than 150% of the area mean income for Lancaster County, which means the family income can't be greater than $84,150. So all of our residents are in that category. We have 16 units. 4 of them are occupied by people over 30 years old. So it's primarily for young starting teachers and nurses. This is our cost right now. It cost about $2 million to build it. Won't bore you with any of the details. The cost per square foot for actually building is $88,000. The cost per unit is $88,000. That compares with what I think Ken was saying, $200 for a single family unit in Newtown. These are, of course, apartments, and they're the same size. They're a little over 1,000 square feet. So it's a little economically feasible to do it this way. Want to go a little further here and get to something. We talked about aging. There are 3 counties in the state of Virginia where more than 30% of the people are over 62 years old. One of them is Lancaster, one's Northumberland, one's Matthews, and another one's in the western part of the state. Lancaster is the single oldest county in the state. 37% of our people are over 30 years old. Over 62 years old, or 31% of them are over 65 years old. So we have a really aging county. We have a small population, unlike Williamsburg. We decreased 1.5% in the last 10 years. The reason I put this slide up here, if you look down a little further, the multi-unit housing in Lancaster County today, 4.7% of the housing is multi-family housing. The state average is 21. So that's really kind of why we did this project. We have no low income, or let's say affordable housing for lower income people, and I'm really talking teachers and nurses. We have 100 teachers in the county. About 10% of them live in Mercer Place. Some of the things I just showed, if you wanted to see this entire presentation, you go to Google and just put in Mercer Place, Kilmarnock, Virginia. You'll see something that says Virginia School Board Association Annual Convention. This presentation was given to that convention. You pull it up and see the entire presentation. And also the article I passed around is there too. If you wouldn't mind, pass that article around for others to take a look at. This is our board. As I said, we have no employees, paid no salaries, but this board raised essentially $850,000 from the public. We borrowed $1.3 million from DHDA, and we borrowed that amount of money and raised that amount of money so that we would only have to charge $625 a month for rent. So it's very affordable for our population. That's really essentially it. I just wanted to say this. We didn't just dream this up. We followed a model in North Carolina. They're projects. If you take a picture of our project and hold it up to a picture of two projects in North Carolina, the only difference is they have 3 buildings and we have 2. It's in Nags Head, it's in Hatteras, it's in Hosky, North Carolina. And they're only for teachers. So essentially, it was a proven concept. We did it the same way they did. We followed their model. It's a very applicable concept for many rural counties. Middlesex desperately needs it, Northumberland needs it. Other rural counties in the state do too. Middlesex in particular has no multifamily rental housing available. 0, not 1 building. I don't know where the teachers in Middlesex live, particularly new teachers. We've had a problem recruiting teachers and getting them to stay here. Most of our teachers come from Pennsylvania or New York. We had 13 teachers living there last year. 10 of them were from Pennsylvania or New York. So it's proved to be great from a standpoint of recruiting and retaining our teachers and our nurses. And I would recommend, if you take a look at our paperwork, if anyone's got any questions, give me a ring. I will provide you with information. We can give you the design if you want to build it. Any questions, anyone? Yeah.
Do you put your rent on a sliding scale, so like it's just strictly $625?
$625 a month is 25% of their after-tax salary of a starting teacher.
When the teacher starts up the ladder,
They go buy a house. You know, they really do, or they move out. Yeah.
If you were doing it differently, if you weren't doing the copy thing, I'm thinking, just from what you said, would you have had like a laundromat section or single bedrooms, or would you have done anything different from?
No, because in our situation, you know, if we had a larger place, if it was in Gloucester and we had 4 buildings, we'd have an office on site, we'd probably have a laundromat, we'd probably have a community room and so forth, but this is 16 units.
Yeah.
And remember, we're trying to collect money from the public. We should have come to you and gotten you to give us some more money to build the laundromat. But no, you know, it was really difficult to do what we did, much less add in. The only amenity we could really afford was the pavilion, the gazebo, and the fire pit.
Now, I'm thinking of that extra bedroom that you couldn't persuade anybody to share as a, you know.
Well, you know, that encourages them, and this is the rationale they use in North Carolina. Even if it's not used now, it provides expansion area for the family. It helps the retention of the teacher. If they get married and they have a child, then they don't have to move out.
Yeah.
So that was the rationale for it. Even if it's not used now, it offers expansion opportunities for the future.
I guess I have another question then. If the teacher gets married, do you take household income or is it still just?
It's household income. Anything that you deal with the government, VHDA included, it's household income. That includes alimony.
So that chance lower than.
Retirement.
If she gets married, her income's gonna be too high to live there.
That's not true. $36,000 is the starting salary for a teacher in Lancaster County. 2 times 36 is 72. This is 84,150. So even 2 nurses, the starting salary for nurses is 41. So if you had 2 nurses, it would be in the low 80s. So they would still fit in. But 2 really seasoned nurses wouldn't work.
Right.
Nurse practitioner wouldn't work. but theory is they can afford their own place. Thank you.
Just one observation. I'm very familiar with this project and know Bill well, and we're all looking for incubators in our county where we can make a difference. This is a private citizen who just retired in our county, saw this in North Carolina, said, I want to make a difference in our community. He came, he conceived the idea, replicated what he saw down there and got it done. And I can't tell you, this is one of the great models. You know, we look at a lot of these ideas. This is one that we can actually all do in our own counties. And Bill's not a builder. This is not his normal business. This is just a dedicated guy who wanted to do something to make a difference. And I can't encourage you enough in all of our rural counties that this is something that is a great model to follow. And I encourage you to talk to Bill. I mean, it's really unique, and it's wonderful for our community in terms of getting traction and holding teachers and first responders, and it's just a terrific thing, and he's been amazing.
And we can help anyone with the designs, with how to do it, or going through the VHDA process, which probably some here, Josh probably understands well, but I can tell you, it's pretty gruesome.
Well, thank you. Yeah, this housing satisfies such an important, essential niche that, yeah, I think all communities can replicate. Our next panelist, last but not least, Ken Pollock.
Let me be the judge of that.
Ken is my esteemed coworker here. Ken is the director of Bay Transit, and Bay Transit is one of the three major divisions of Bay Aging. It's a 12-county demand response rural public transportation system, and Ken, before working for us, was working for DRPT, Department of Rail and Public Transit in Richmond, and before that, he was the Bay Transit director. So we've got a theme here, people leaving, coming back. Anyway, go ahead, Ken.
I will be brief because I know we want to leave some time for some questions for all the panelists. There are 41 public transit operators in the state of Virginia, from light rail and Hampton Roads in Norfolk and Northern Virginia to large urban systems like Hampton Roads Transit, Greater Richmond Transit, smaller urban systems in the college towns, Blacksburg, Lynchburg, Harrisonburg, and then there's the rural transit providers like Bay Transit. There's about 20 of us that provide rural public transportation around the state of Virginia. All transit services are funded through a combination of passenger fare revenue and local, state, and federal funding partnerships. The formulas differ, but all public transit systems are subsidized. None are able to exist just on the basis of the fare revenues that they take in. A little bit about Bay Transit. We started in 1996 in Gloucester County with one bus. It took off like crazy. In about 10 years' time, we had expanded to where we are now, which is 12 counties, all 10 counties of the Middle Peninsula and Northern Neck, plus New Kent and Charles City counties. And one of the things that seems to be a theme that we've heard today is the fact that our region is one of the oldest demographically, if not the oldest, in the Commonwealth. And transportation and access to jobs, medical, and retail services is a critical piece to all of this. So as we continue to get older, we're going to have more and more citizens who cannot drive for whatever reason, and some of them we don't want them driving anyway. So we need to provide access to services and some public transit for them. As Josh mentioned, we've got a 12-county area. 3,000 square miles is what we serve with our buses. We have a peak service. We have about 25 to 30 buses operating on any given day. We have a fleet of 50 vehicles. We do service called demand response, and Tripp touched on that earlier, which is essentially is door-to-door service. Because of the rural nature of this area, we can't do fixed route service like they do in urban areas because people don't live close enough to the main highways in order to access the transportation. Typically, the standard is 3/4 of a mile from a main road would be a reason to develop fixed route services. we don't have enough people that can access that. So we do demand response, which is much less efficient and costs more money to operate. People call in a day in advance in order to schedule a ride, and we take them where they need to go, and we come back later that day and pick them up and take them home. Our fare revenues are right now $1 a ride in all of our areas except Lancaster County. It's $2 a ride, and we do some trips into Williamsburg from New Kent for $2 or $3 a ride. So it's very affordable. We try very hard to keep it as affordable as we possibly can. One of the things that we've always tried to stress is that this is for all people, for all reasons. It's public transportation. Because we're part of an agency on aging, oftentimes people misconstrue the type of transportation that we're providing. We do not require any eligibility as far as senior citizen, disability, or poverty levels. But the misconception in the community is that you have to fit one of these categories in order to utilize our service. It's not the case. So we constantly are out trying to preach that we are for the general public. This past year, we provided 165,000 one-way trips in the 12-county area that we serve. The average trip was about 10 miles. That's what we're dealing with when it comes to the rurality, that's a good word, of our community. People to get to an area where there's health services or retail services or jobs, it's about a 10-mile one-way trip. And that's reflected in the amount of miles that we travel per year. 40% of our rides this year were work-related, so that's the largest majority of our trips are to and from work. 21% were health-related, and 20% were retail-related, so those are very close. But 80% of our rides are economic generators, and that's what we want to stress to people, that we're not just taking Aunt Sally over to get her hair done. We are also getting people to work, getting people to medical services, and getting people to places where they can spend their dollars and shopping. What we have found is that the demand far exceeds our ability to meet it, that we don't have enough resources. We try to track the number of trips that we cannot accommodate. That last year, that was over 5,000 that we know of, where people called and asked for a ride and we said, we're full, we can't do it. We know there's more for people that have gotten frustrated and just given up and don't call anymore because we can't get to all the areas that we need to be in order to serve the whole county. Most of our riders are transportation dependent. As you know, in this community, if you can afford a car, you've got a car. It's not a choice ridership situation. Our goal is to attract more choice riders, to be able to provide some fixed route services to work centers so that people can choose to use us and leave their car at home. Right now, we have a lot of trouble attracting those folks. The biggest challenge is that it requires more local contributions. We have not gotten any increase in local contributions in over 6 years. So because of the economy, we've just had to hold on to what we've got. But we can't put more buses on the road. We can't meet the excess demands. We can't do express routes between Kilmarnock and Tappahannock and Gloucester Point and things like that, or access outside into the urban crescent where people are going to work. We just don't have the capacity to do that right now. So we are hoping that as the economy turns, we can get a greater local contribution so that we can start expanding the service. Tripp talked a little bit about state contribution and the need to maybe reevaluate how we fund transportation and maybe move away from roads and into alternative choices. Something that's come up recently with us that I just want to touch on briefly and make you aware of is that the state Department of Rail and Public Transportation, where I used to work for 3 years, has proposed a revision to the state transit operating formula. It's an attempt to reallocate funds. Unfortunately, it's not an attempt to bring in new revenue. It's just simply a reallocation. We in the rural community believe that this could be a real threat to rural transit. That what we've seen from this reallocation, which is called SJR 297, Senate Joint Resolution 297, is going to place a greater burden on local communities just to keep transit in the rural areas at the same level it is. So just wanted you to be aware that we are trying to work with our legislators to educate them on how this could impact particularly rural communities as we struggle with trying to provide transportation today. On a lighter note, I would like to end on the fact that we are getting ready to break ground in early 2013 on a brand new transit facility. It's going to be right across the way from that garden in the lot over there. We will leave some trees up to keep a buffer. We are looking at a 19,000 square foot administrative and maintenance facility that will hopefully be a beacon in Gloucester County. It will be the first designed LEED Gold certification building in the county, maybe in the region, I don't know. But we are looking at some very cost-effective, energy-efficient strategies, geothermal heat pumps, photovoltaic solar panels, 6,000-gallon cistern rain collection water system to wash our buses and use as non-potable water. We are looking at natural lighting, some very creative uses of natural lighting to reduce our electric bill. And as Jimmy knows, when we went into this project, we were very skeptical about this as just a green project to be trendy and be cool. What we found is that over the life of a building, when we're projecting a 30 to 40 year life for this building, over that time period, all of these things will pay for themselves in less than 10 years. As far as the energy efficiency to operate the building, we're very confident that we're making a solid, sound investment in our operating costs over the next 30 years. So keep an eye out for that. We'll hopefully be in the building by spring of 2014. So I'll leave it for some more questions for the panel, or I'll be glad to answer questions as well.
We've gone a little bit over our allocated time, and I appreciate everyone for coming out here, listening, participating, asking some questions. But are there any final questions for the panelists? Anyone have anything?
I had a quick question for you, sir. How did you get your data on the destination of the transport? Do you ask folks when they board, or do you just...
Well, because they call ahead. They schedule a ride. They're saying, I need to go to Dr. Jones, or I need to go to such and such a place. And we make some assumptions, but we typically know people that ride 5 days a week to Walmart are working there. People that ride 1 day a week are shopping there. So we kind of categorize them based on the request. If it was a fixed route service, we wouldn't be able to easily get that data.
Thank you.
I mean, is there a possibility, though, of having a few fixed routes?
We would very much like to do that, but we're at a point where we need more investment in what we have.
Yeah, the other thing was that you said you had, 50 buses, but there are only 25 to 30 on the road every day?
Yeah, we have backups, and we have offices in Warsaw, Gloucester, New Kent, and a small office in Whitestone. So we have some spares spread around. Some of those buses are also providing senior center transportation for Bay Aging, which is not our public transit services, but is part of our fleet.
And the other thing, is there any competition from those kind of vans that you see in the Caribbean, where they're on these fixed routes and they fill up? Does anybody else know what I'm talking about? I mean, is there a place for that kind of thing to be encouraged in this area?
I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with what you're talking about, so I don't know.
Well,
But just smaller transport, what you would probably have for your on-axle buses, the smaller stuff.
Yeah, all of our vehicles are the smaller vehicles.
You know.
But I don't know that this area would have the densities. When you play the densities
Right.
here versus the Caribbean, we just don't have the densities here.
Right, how would, and that's the biggest challenge with fixed route. We actually tried one in Lancaster County 10 years ago, and nobody could get to Route 3. We were trying to run, I think, from Warsaw to Kilmarnock. And so you need the densities, and we talked about doing pickup points. But if you can't get to the pickup point, then it doesn't, you know, the kind of responses we got from people was, well, I live 5 miles from Route 3. I got a ride from my neighbor. I might as well get him to take me all the way into town instead of just to the bus stop. So densities is a real issue with us in trying to utilize fixed route. Our goal would be to have some small fixed route services around the towns of, say, Kilmarnock, Tappahannock, Gloucester, Warsaw, where we would feed that from the rural areas into town and let them have fixed route service around the town to get to the shops. But without more local and state investment, you know, we're really just trying to hold on to what we have right now.
Okay, oh, yes, go ahead.
Josh, I just, this is not a question, but this is just a comment. I think that we, and myself as a resident there, are just very, very fortunate to have Bay Aging and all the divisions that are there. If we didn't have that resource available to us in the region, we wouldn't have the transportation, we wouldn't have this facility that we have here, and we wouldn't have the services that we provide. So, from me as a resident, I just want to thank you all, not only just for putting on this here, but for all that you do for our citizens.
Thank you very much. And one quick thing that I'll say, I didn't explain it. This property where we are right now, Daffodil Gardens, it's an affordable senior apartment complex. 62 units exist here. The funding comes from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development through the Section 202 Supportive Housing for the Elderly program. And we have 10 of these projects in the region. So I just wanted to emphasize that. But thank you. I'll thank all the panelists. I really appreciate your time. And thank all of you for coming. It's obviously a theme and a topic that it touches all of us. And you can probably be here all day, but we don't have all day right now. So thanks a lot. Have a good day.
Thank you.